Good morning, gardeners. This is Mark and from Sweet Mandolins Urban Farm. Today we are sitting in a very jungly food forest, and 2 years ago at this time, nothing but rock. And a lot of people have been asking me what I've been feeding my plants and my vegetation to get so healthy and green. And one of the first things I would like to say, it's in Arizona you need deep mulch. So I started with the wood chips about 2 years ago, and I try to keep it at least a foot deep. And in this chicken run it needs a lot more, but the hens here like to take care of the issue too, because they like to scratch and peck all these wood chips and fertilize it with their manures. So this chicken run, I'm basically not even fertilizing anymore. I do when I plant a tree or something, I'll amend the soil a little bit and cover it with deep mulch. But the chickens, that's their job in this chicken run. So we're sitting under the mulberry tree, and we just started harvesting some mulberries. They're starting to turn color, but when they turn purple, they get really sweet and ready to fall off in your hand. So we've been starting to pick them today. I'm going to go around and probably collect about a quart of them today. And this is the apricot tree. Starting to get apricots. Those have been in the ground for 15 months as a bare root. So they're already getting tall. And I'll give you an idea what I did 2 years ago. Over here on the other side, on the south side of my chicken coop that I built, there's about a 12-foot tall mulberry. 2 years ago, after planting this one, I took a couple of cuttings off it and just stuck them in the ground right next to it, and I had one root and I transplanted it. Now I got one over here. After 2 years, it's 12 feet tall and fruiting and shading the hen house. So I pre-planned by planting the mulberries on the south side of my area for the hen house before I even built it, so that this summer, it's already getting in the 90s now, it's already shading it. But on to what we were going to be talking about. What do I feed my trees? Well, there's many things I do. One of them would be, you can see some right here. Hasn't broken down a whole lot yet. People ask me, what kind of poop is that? Well, it's not poop. What I do is I buy about an 80-pound bag of alfalfa pellets for horse feed. So it's about $20 for an 80-pound bag. But that 80-pound bag is enough for me to fertilize everything in my yard, front and back side, in the springtime, so that I can get the nutrients from what the horses eat, which is protein, breaks down to nitrogen, and it has other micronutrients that are healthy for the plants. And look at all these grapes. They're starting to blossom on here. Plus, all this mulch was last year's peanuts that I grew, and in the winter time I just chopped them all down and it became mulch. But I didn't pull them up because I kept the roots in the ground, because peanuts, along with anything in the bean and pea family, is a nitrogen fixer, because it'll take the nitrogen out of the atmosphere and put it into the soil, these little nodules on the roots, and then it will add the nitrogen to your soil. That's why they call it a nitrogen fixing plant. Just like there's nitrogen fixing trees that I have, like the moringa, anything that has the seed pods. And there's also a lot of things that I'll just buy, just regular old steer manure, and I've always tested it because I don't want to grow it on my vegetables. I just covered the lens, sorry about that. because of problem they've had with aminopyralids. So I always test it first, and if I don't have any plants that have any effect, then I'll use it in a lot of areas. But most of my plants just get all the worm castings from all the worms that show up on my soil because of all the mulch that I do. Let me see if I can find an area. I'll just remove some of the soil. You can see the macronutrients, or the macroorganisms that I should say, the bugs and the worms that show up. So here's some lemongrass that I had, and I just threw it down here. I just pulled it away, and look at all these worms. It's just loaded with worms. Just a couple inches down and the ground is crawling with worms. And look at this soil. This is all worm castings. And all these feeder roots growing in with these worms. Those are the trees and plants that I'm growing. Matter of fact, I have a Muscadine grape here. It's a warm weather grape from Florida that I'm going to trellis up here. So it came back, and I had 2 of them planting. I couldn't find the other one, so I thought it died, but I just noticed today it's right down here. It came back up out of the soil. Look at that elderberry. I'm so happy about that. I'm just gonna, after I remove that concrete, I'm just gonna let it start spreading, and I'm just gonna have this area, my elderberry area, so I can start harvesting elderberries. Sounds like a plan. Another thing I wanted to show you is something I've been doing for about 1.5 years now too. I learned it from David the Good, and also I started watching stuff on the Jadam, Korean natural farming, and it's basically how gardening on the cheap. So like yesterday, I pulled a bunch of dandelions out of my grass, just pulled them out, and I saved them all because I wanted to put them in a bucket, 5-gallon bucket, Home Depot bucket, and I'll add rainwater and